The stars stretched endlessly before the massive warship as it glided through the darkness of space. Captain Daewon stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the view screen with calm eyes. The ship hummed with life around him, 1,000 different sounds blending together into a familiar symphony. This was the eternal horizon, humanity's pride and the first true warship capable of traveling beyond known space. Daewon had commanded many vessels in his career, but none like this. The ship was enormous, carrying 847 souls into the unknown. Every person aboard represented the best humanity had to offer. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, doctors, all working together toward one goal, to explore the galaxy and find humanity's place among the stars. Chief Engineer Hana rushed onto the bridge, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She carried a datapad and wore an expression that Daewon had learned meant trouble. Not disaster, but definitely something unusual. "Captain, we're picking up those readings again," she said, pulling up a holographic display. Strange waves of energy pulsed on the screen. Unlike anything in their database, they're getting stronger. Whatever is out there, we're getting close. Daewon leaned forward, studying the patterns. They had been tracking these anomalous readings for 3 weeks now, following them to the edge of explored space and beyond. The Galactic Council had approved this mission specifically to investigate these signals. Nobody knew what caused them, but the energy signatures were massive, powerful enough to be detected from halfway across the galaxy. Tactical Officer Jiho, barely 25 years old but brilliant beyond his years, called out from his station. "Captain, I'm detecting a spatial distortion ahead. It's big, really big." "How big?" Daewon asked. "It could swallow a small moon," Jiho replied, his fingers dancing across his console. "The distortion is affecting space itself. Gravity waves, time dilation, electromagnetic interference. I've never seen anything like this." Dr. Mirai entered the bridge, summoned by the growing tension. She was the ship's xenobiologist and first contact specialist, someone who understood alien life better than most humans understood themselves. "Could it be artificial?" she asked. "A gate, perhaps? Or a weapon?" "Unknown," Hana said, shaking her head. "The energy patterns don't match anything we've encountered. Not human. Not from any known species in the Galactic Council." Daewon made his decision. "Take us closer. Slow approach. All sensors active. I want to know everything about that distortion." The eternal horizon moved forward carefully, like a predator stalking unknown prey. The crew worked in focused silence, each person aware they might be witnessing something no human had ever seen before. This was why they had joined this mission. This was exploration at its purest form. The distortion grew on the view screen, a swirling mass of twisted space that hurt to look at directly. Colors that shouldn't exist flickered at its edges. Reality itself seemed to bend around it, creating impossible geometries that made Daewon's head ache. "Captain, I'm receiving a message from Admiral Taeyang," the communications officer announced. "Earth wants a full report before we proceed further." Daewon nodded. Admiral Taeyang commanded the entire fleet from Earth, and he was responsible for the safety of every ship under his command. "Send him everything we have. Tell him we're proceeding with extreme caution." The response came back quickly. Taeyang's voice filled the bridge, steady and confident. "Understood, Eternal Horizon. You have permission to investigate, but do not engage with the anomaly directly. Observation only. We need you back home in one piece." "Acknowledged, Admiral," Daewon replied. But as they drew closer, something changed. The distortion began to pulse, responding to their presence. Energy readings spiked across every sensor. Alarms blared throughout the ship. "It's pulling us in," Jiho shouted, his calm demeanor cracking. "Gravitational forces are increasing exponentially. I can't compensate." Hana's fingers flew across her console. "Engines at full reverse. It's not enough. Whatever this thing is, it wants us." Daewon gripped his command chair. "All hands, brace for impact. Seal all compartments. This is not a drill." The ship lurched violently as the distortion's pull strengthened. The Eternal Horizon, a vessel, designed to withstand combat and the harshest environments in space, groaned under the strain. Metal screeched. Systems sparked and failed throughout the ship. "Communications are down," someone yelled. "We've lost contact with Earth." "Keep trying," Day One ordered. "Send a distress beacon. Automated, maximum power." The distortion filled. The entire view screen now, a swirling vortex of impossible colors and twisted light. The ship was being dragged toward it despite every engine burning at maximum capacity. The crew held on to their stations, fear and excitement mixing on their faces. Dr. Mireille stared at her readings, her eyes wide. "Captain, this isn't a natural phenomenon. Someone built this. The mathematics, the structure, it's all deliberate. This is a doorway." "A doorway to where?" Day One asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "Somewhere else, somewhere far away." The ship crossed the threshold. Everything changed at once. Light became sound. Sound became color. Time stretched and compressed simultaneously. Every person aboard the Eternal Horizon felt their atoms being pulled apart and reassembled, experienced 1,000 lifetimes in a single heartbeat, saw the birth and death of stars in the blink of an eye, then silence. The Eternal Horizon vanished from known space completely. Every sensor, every tracking device, every quantum-entangled communication system designed to keep the ship connected to Earth went dead. One moment, the vessel was there, transmitting data and telemetry. The next moment, nothing. On Earth, Admiral Taeyang watched his screens go dark. He waited 1 hour, then 2, then 12. He dispatched rescue ships to the last known coordinates. They found empty space. No debris, no energy signatures, no trace that a ship had ever been there. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 100 different species debated what had happened. Some believed the humans had been destroyed. Others thought they had discovered something dangerous and fled. A few whispered that humanity had found something powerful and was hiding it. But the truth was simpler and more terrible. The Eternal Horizon was simply gone. Humanity mourned. Memorial services were held on every colony world. The families of the 847 crew members wept for their lost loved ones. Poets wrote songs about the brave explorers who had ventured too far. Children were taught about the ship that had disappeared among the stars. Years became decades. Decades became centuries. The Eternal Horizon faded from current events into history, from history into legend. New ships were built bearing the names of the lost crew members. Humanity continued expanding, exploring, growing stronger and more influential in the galactic community. But nobody forgot. Deep in classified archives, scientists studied the last transmissions from the ship. Some believed the crew still lived, somewhere in the vast universe. Others knew such hope was foolish. 500 years passed. The galaxy changed. New conflicts arose and were resolved. Empires rose and fell. The Eternal Horizon became a story, told to children, a reminder of the risks of exploration, a symbol of humanity's courage and curiosity, and somewhere, far beyond the edges of known space in a place where reality worked by different rules, the Eternal Horizon and its crew endured. They were not dead. They were not lost. They were being transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before, something it would eventually fear and desperately need. But that transformation would take time. Thousands of years of time compressed into moments stretched across lifetimes. The Eternal Horizon had vanished. But one day, it would return. And when it did, everything would change. Ambassador Soo-hyun walked through the grand halls of the Galactic Council station, her footsteps echoing on the polished floor. She had served as humanity's representative for 12 years now, long enough to understand the complex politics that governed thousands of species across the galaxy. The station orbited a neutral world, a massive structure that housed diplomats, soldiers, traders, and countless others from every corner of known space. Today's council session would be difficult. She could feel it in the way other ambassadors avoided her eyes, in the whispered conversations that stopped when she approached. Something was brewing, and humanity was the target. The council chamber was enormous, a circular room with seats arranged in ascending tiers. Each species had their designated place, their flags and symbols displayed proudly. Soo-hyun took her seat in the human section, noting that fewer friendly faces turned to greet her than usual. Counselor Vrath called the session to order. He was a tall reptilian creature from a species that had dominated this sector for millennia before humanity arrived. His scales gleamed under the chamber's lights, and his cold eyes surveyed the room with calculated precision. "We gather today to address a growing concern," Vrath announced, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "The human expansion has accelerated beyond acceptable parameters. In the past century alone, humanity has established 73 new colony worlds. Their fleet grows larger each year. Their influence spreads unchecked." Soo-hyun remained calm, though anger burned in her chest. This again. Always this. Humanity's success apparently made other species nervous. "We have broken no laws," she stated clearly. "Every colony was established on uninhabited worlds or through legal treaties. Our fleet expansion is within the limits set by this very council." "Technically correct," another counselor interjected. "A floating gas-based life form that spoke through a translation device. But the spirit of the law suggests restraint. Humanity shows none. You consume resources at alarming rates. You breed faster than most species. You adapt to environments that would kill others. You punish us for being successful?" Soo-hyun asked, her voice sharp. Vrath leaned forward. "We simply suggest that humanity accept certain limitations. For the good of galactic harmony." The debate raged for hours. Proposals were made to restrict human expansion, to limit fleet sizes, to impose economic sanctions. Soo-hyun fought against each one, citing treaties and precedents calling on allied species for support. Some stood with humanity. Many remained silent, unwilling to oppose Vrath's coalition. The session finally ended without resolution, but Soo-hyun knew this was far from over. As she left the chamber, her aide rushed to her side with urgent news. "Ambassador, there's someone you need to meet. He's been waiting for 3 hours. Says it's about the Eternal Horizon." Soo-hyun's breath caught. The Eternal Horizon, the ship that had vanished 500 years ago, long before she was born. It was history, a tragedy studied in schools. Why would anyone bring it up now? She found the visitor in a private meeting room. He was young, perhaps 30, with intense eyes and nervous energy. He introduced himself as Minho, a civilian scientist who had spent years studying the old records. "I'm a descendant of Chief Engineer Hana," Minho explained, spreading documents across the table. "My family kept her personal logs, her research, everything. And I found something the official reports never included." Soo-hyun examined the documents. They were old, some scanned from physical paper, others recovered from ancient data cores. Hana's notes were meticulous, filled with calculations and observations about the anomaly that had taken the ship. "The distortion wasn't random," Minho said excitedly. Hana suspected it was artificial, built by someone or something. And here's the important part. She believed the ship wasn't destroyed. Her final transmission, the one that never made it into official records, said they were being pulled into another dimension. "Another dimension," Soo-hyun repeated slowly. "That's theoretical physics. We can't even prove other dimensions exist." "We couldn't 500 years ago," Minho corrected. "But now, we have the math. We have the models. And I've been tracking energy signatures similar to the original anomaly. They're appearing again, Ambassador, at the edge of the galaxy, in the same region where the Eternal Horizon vanished." Soo-hyun felt cold. "You brought this to the council?" "They dismissed it. Called it wishful thinking. Counselor Vrath personally shut down my presentation." Minho's frustration was evident. "But I know I'm right. Something is happening out there. And it's connected to the Eternal Horizon." Soo-hyun made a decision. "I'll authorize a discreet investigation. We'll send a science vessel quietly, without making it an official council matter." But before she could act on that promise, reports started flooding in from the frontier. Remote outposts were going silent. Small colonies reported strange attacks. Ships vanished without distress calls. At first, the incidents seemed random, unconnected. Pirates, perhaps, or natural disasters. General Kyung-mi, commander of Earth's defensive fleet, called an emergency meeting with Soo-hyun. The general was a hard woman, scarred from decades of service. Someone who had fought in 3 major conflicts and survived them all. "These aren't random attacks," Kyung-mi said, displaying a tactical map. "Look at the pattern. Every incident occurs near the galactic edge. Whatever is doing this is testing us, probing our defenses, learning our capabilities. What kind of enemy are we facing? Soo-hyun asked, unknown. Our ships that investigate disappear. The few automated probes we've recovered show footage of something before losing signal. Energy weapons beyond our technology. Ships moving at impossible speeds. And here's the strange part, they never fully commit. They strike, observe, and withdraw. Soo-hyun thought of Minho's research. Could it be the Eternal Horizon? Kyungmi frowned. A 500-year-old ship? Impossible. Even if the crew somehow survived, they'd be dead of old age by now. And their technology was advanced for its time but primitive compared to what we have today. These attacks demonstrate capabilities far beyond anything we can build. Yet Soo-hyun couldn't shake the feeling. The timing was too perfect. The location too specific. Something was returning from wherever the Eternal Horizon had gone, and it was connected to that lost ship. The Galactic Council finally acknowledged the threat after a major trade station went dark. Vrath called for a united response. Though Soo-hyun noticed, he seemed more interested in using the crisis to further limit human influence than actually solving the problem. We should establish a joint task force, Vrath proposed, with strict limitations on human participation. Given humanity's aggressive expansion, we cannot risk giving them access to advanced combat data. Soo-hyun nearly laughed at the absurdity. You're facing an unknown threat that attacks everyone equally and you're still playing politics? We're being prudent, Vrath replied coldly. But the attacks continued, growing bolder. Entire fleets were dispatched to investigate and found nothing. The enemy remained invisible, striking without warning and disappearing without trace. Fear spread through the galaxy. Trade routes were abandoned. Colonies demanded protection that couldn't be provided. Minho appeared at Soo-hyun's office again, his face pale with excitement and terror. The energy signatures are spiking. Something big is about to happen. The same readings that appeared before the Eternal Horizon vanished are appearing again, but stronger. Much stronger. Where? Soo-hyun demanded. Everywhere. All across the galactic edge. It's like reality itself is tearing open. General Kyungmi mobilized the fleet. Other species did the same. Thousands of warships converged on the affected regions, weapons ready, sensors scanning desperately for any sign of the enemy. And then it happened. During a full council session, with representatives from every major species present, the station's alarm shrieked. A massive spatial rift was opening nearby, visible through the chamber's viewports. It was enormous, a tear in space that pulsed with impossible colors. Every weapon system on the station activated automatically. Defense fleets moved into position. Counselors abandoned diplomatic protocol and rushed to see what was emerging. The rift widened. Energy readings broke every sensor trying to measure them. And slowly, deliberately, a ship began to emerge. Soo-hyun recognized the basic design even though everything else had changed. She had seen it in history books and memorial displays and old videos from 500 years ago. It was the Eternal Horizon, but it was wrong. The ship was massive now, 5 times its original size. Strange technology covered its hull, designs that hurt to look at directly. Energy crackled along structures that shouldn't exist. The vessel radiated power that made every military ship present seem like toys. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some species screamed to open fire. Others demanded retreat. A few simply stared in shock. Then a voice filled every communication channel, every speaker, every device capable of receiving audio. It was calm, measured, and achingly human. This is Captain Daewon of the human warship Eternal Horizon. We have returned. Soo-hyun gripped her seat, tears streaming down her face. They were alive. Somehow, impossibly, they were alive. But looking at that transformed ship, at the power it radiated, she wondered what had happened during those 500 years. Where had they been? What had changed them? The Eternal Horizon hung in space like a dark promise. Its hull gleamed with technology that seemed to shift and change as observers watched, patterns flowing across the surface in ways that defied physics. The ship was massive, dwarfing even the largest battle cruisers in the assembled fleets, yet it made no aggressive moves, simply floating there as if waiting. Captain Daewon stood on the bridge, looking much as he had 500 years ago. His uniform was different now, made of materials that seemed alive, but his face was the same. Unchanged. Ageless. His eyes, however, carried weight that hadn't been there before. The weight of experiences no human should have survived. Beside him stood Chief Engineer Hana, though calling her simply human now seemed inaccurate. Cybernetic enhancements covered parts of her body, glowing softly with inner light. Her eyes had been replaced with something better, something that could see across multiple spectrums simultaneously, yet her smile when it appeared was still warmly human. "They're terrified," Hana observed, reading the energy signatures from the surrounding ships. "Can't say I blame them. We must look like monsters." "We are monsters," a new voice said. Commander Yunji stepped forward, a woman who hadn't existed when the Eternal Horizon first launched. She had been born during the voyage in that strange place between dimensions. She was second generation, raised in a reality where the normal rules didn't apply. "But we're their monsters. We came back to save them even if they don't know it yet." Day One nodded slowly. "Open a channel to the Galactic Council station. Let's give them answers before they do something foolish." The communication systems activated, far more advanced than anything the galaxy possessed. The signal bypassed every security protocol, every encryption, every defense designed to prevent unauthorized broadcasts. It simply appeared on every screen, every speaker, unavoidable and crystal clear. Ambassador Suhyun watched from the council chamber as Day One's image appeared. He looked young, impossibly young for someone who should have been dead for centuries. But there was something ancient in his expression, something that spoke of endless years and terrible knowledge. "People of the galaxy," Day One began, his voice calm and measured. "I am Captain Day One of the Eternal Horizon. 500 years ago, by your reckoning, my ship and crew vanished while investigating an anomaly at the galaxy's edge. We did not die. We were taken to another place, another dimension where time flows differently. For you, 5 centuries have passed. For us, it has been much longer." He paused, letting that sink in. "We survived through adaptation, through transformation, through technologies gifted to us by a dying civilization. We have returned because our galaxy, your galaxy, faces a threat unlike anything you have encountered, and we are the only ones who can help you survive what is coming." Counselor Vrath found his voice, though it trembled slightly. "This is impossible. No species can survive 500 years. No technology can advance so dramatically. This must be some trick, some deception." Day One's expression didn't change. "I understand your skepticism. Allow me to demonstrate our capabilities not as a threat, but as proof of what we've become." 3 warships from Vrath's species suddenly went dark. Every system shut down simultaneously. Weapons, engines, life support, everything. The crews weren't harmed, but they were completely helpless. The ships drifted in space, dead weight. Then, just as quickly, the systems reactivated. The ships came back online, undamaged and fully functional. The entire process had taken 5 seconds. "We did not fire a weapon," Day One explained. "We simply asked their systems to sleep. This is the level of technology we now possess. We could have destroyed those ships. We could destroy every ship present, but we won't. Because we are still human, and humans protect those who cannot protect themselves." The council chamber erupted in argument. Some species demanded the Eternal Horizon be destroyed immediately. Others wanted to study the technology. A few, including Su-hyun, simply wanted to understand what had happened. General Kyungmi's voice cut through the chaos on a private channel to Su-hyun. "I've run every analysis we have. That ship could obliterate our entire fleet without effort. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be gone." "I recommend we hear them out," Su-hyun agreed. She activated her own communication channel. "Captain Day One, this is Ambassador Su-hyun, representing humanity. I speak for Earth when I say we want to understand. Will you come aboard the station? Will you explain what happened and what you need from us?" Day One smiled slightly. "We will send a delegation. But I must warn you, what we have to tell you will be difficult to accept. The universe is far stranger and more dangerous than any of you realize." An hour later, a small shuttle detached from the Eternal Horizon and approached the council station. It moved smoothly, almost gracefully, leaving no exhaust trail and making no sound even as it entered the station's docking bay. The airlock cycled and the delegation emerged. Day One led the way, still looking exactly as history remembered him. Behind him came Hana, her cybernetic enhancements drawing stares and whispers. Dr. Mirai followed, and she looked ancient despite her augmentations. Her face carried lines etched by thousands of years of knowledge and sorrow. And finally came Sunwoo, a young officer who represented the new generation, those born during the long voyage. They walked through corridors lined with armed guards and curious onlookers. No weapons were drawn, but the tension was thick enough to cut. These beings looked human, mostly human, but there was something else about them. Something that made primitive instincts scream warnings. The council provided a secure briefing room. Soo-hyun attended, along with Kyungmi, Vrath, and representatives from a dozen major species. Security was maximum, though everyone present knew it was meaningless against people who could shut down warships with a thought. Daewon sat calmly at the head of the table and began to speak. We were pulled into a parallel dimension, a place where the laws of physics operate differently. Time moves at different speeds there. What seemed like moments could be years. What seemed like years could be moments. We spent over 3,000 years in that place. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the room. 3,000 years. Impossible, yet the evidence sat before them. We encountered a civilization there, Daewon continued. They called themselves the Architects. They were old, older than this galaxy, older than most stars you can see. They had seeded life across dimensions, guided evolution, built wonders that would seem like magic to us. And they were dying. Dr. Mirai took over the explanation. The Architects were fleeing something they called the Devourers, entities that consume entire dimensional planes, breaking down reality itself and feeding on the energy released. The Architects had fought them for eons, but they were losing. Their civilization was in collapse when we arrived. They offered us a choice, Hana added. Transform and survive, or remain as we were and die. We chose survival. They taught us their technologies, rebuilt our ship, augmented our bodies. Some of us changed more than others. Some remained mostly human, but all of us became something more. Sunwoo spoke for the first time, her voice young but steady. I was born in that place. My parents died there and their parents before them. 17 generations lived and died aboard the Eternal Horizon during our journey. We became a civilization unto ourselves, learning and adapting and surviving. The Architects gave us one final mission before they faded completely, Daewon said, his expression grave. Return to our home dimension and warn them. The Devourers have consumed 40% of the parallel dimension. The barriers between realities are weakening. Soon, within 1 year, they will breach into this galaxy, and when they do, every species, every world, every living thing will face extinction. Silence fell over the room. The weight of that statement crushed all other concerns. Political rivalries, territorial disputes, none of it mattered in the face of dimensional annihilation. Vrath's voice was hollow. How do we fight something like that? With difficulty, Daewon admitted. The Devourers are not beings as you understand them. They are more like natural forces, entropy given purpose and hunger. The Architects fought them for millions of years and lost, but they learned. They developed weapons, strategies, technologies, and they gave all of that knowledge to us. Why you? Another counselor asked. Why trust humanity? Because we were there, Hana answered simply. Because we endured. Because when faced with impossible odds, humans adapt. We don't give up. We find a way. The Architects recognized that quality. They saw in us something worth preserving and empowering. Soo-hyun leaned forward. What do you need from us? Time, resources, and trust, Daewon replied. We need to upgrade your ships, your weapons, your defenses. We need to train your warriors. We need unity across all species because the Devourers don't care about your politics or your differences. They will consume everything equally, and if we refuse? Vrath asked. Daewon met his eyes. Then you die. All of you. We will fight alone if necessary. But our chances of success decrease dramatically without galactic cooperation. This is not a threat or coercion. It's simple reality. The meeting lasted for hours. Questions were asked and answered. Data was shared. Projections were made. Slowly, reluctantly, the council began to accept the truth. The council chamber had never been so full. Every species with representation in the galaxy had sent their leaders, scientists, and military commanders. The room buzzed with 1,000 conversations in 100 different languages. Fear and curiosity mixed in equal measure as everyone waited for the Eternal Horizons crew to reveal their full story. Captain Daewon stood at the center of the chamber, a holographic display floating behind him. The display showed images from the parallel dimension, landscapes that shouldn't exist, structures that defied geometry, and skies that held colors the gathered species had never seen. Beside him stood Dr. Mirai, now serving as the crew's historian and keeper of their collective memory. What we are about to show you will challenge everything you believe about reality, Daewon began. Some of you will refuse to accept it. Some will think we're lying. But every word, every image, every piece of data we share is true. The lights dimmed. The holographic display expanded, enveloping the entire chamber. Suddenly, everyone felt as if they were standing on the bridge of the eternal horizon 500 years ago, watching the spatial distortion pull them in. The anomaly was a gateway, Daewon narrated as they watched the ship disappear into swirling chaos, built by the architects millions of years ago as an escape route from the Devourers. When we triggered it, the gateway activated and pulled us through. The display shifted. They saw the moment the ship emerged into the parallel dimension. The sky was wrong, filled with geometric patterns that pulsed with light. Multiple suns hung in impossible positions. Gravity worked differently, pulling in directions that didn't exist in normal space. Dr. Mireille's voice was soft but clear. For the first month, we thought we had died. This couldn't be real. Our instruments went insane, giving readings that contradicted each other. Time itself was inconsistent. I would sleep for what felt like an hour and wake to find a week had passed for others. Days stretched into years, then compressed into minutes. The display showed the crew struggling, adapting, slowly learning to navigate this strange reality. Then came the first contact with the architects. They appeared as beings of pure light at first, formless and vast. Gradually, they took shapes the human mind could process, though those shapes still hurt to look at for too long. They were ancient beyond measure, and their sadness was palpable even through the recording. The architects explained their situation, Daewon continued. They had built a magnificent civilization spanning multiple dimensions. But the Devourers came, entities that existed outside normal reality, feeding on the very fabric of existence. The architects fought back, developing weapons and defenses. But the Devourers were relentless. For every one destroyed, two more appeared. The war lasted millions of years, and the architects were losing. Chief Engineer Hana stepped forward, her cybernetic implants glowing faintly. They offered us two choices: return home immediately through a one-way gate or stay and learn from them. If we stayed, they would transform us, give us the tools to survive in that dimension, and eventually return home with the knowledge needed to fight the Devourers. We voted, Daewon said simply. It was democratic. Every crew member had a say. The vote was nearly unanimous. We chose to stay. The display showed what happened next. The transformation process was gradual and painful. The architects began modifying the crew, not just their bodies but their minds, their very cells. Some changes were obvious, like Hana's cybernetic enhancements. Others were subtle genetic modifications that allowed them to perceive reality differently. Young Officer Sunwoo spoke up, her voice carrying across the chamber. My grandparents were part of the original crew. They told stories about those early years, how it hurt to change, but also how it felt right somehow, how they could suddenly see things they'd been blind to before, understand concepts that had been impossible. The display shifted again, showing the reconstruction of the eternal horizon. The architects tore the ship apart and rebuilt it using technologies that seemed like magic. Engines that could fold space, weapons that fired concentrated reality, shields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We learned, Dr. Mireille said. For 3,000 years we learned. Science, philosophy, combat, construction. The architects taught us everything they knew. And we lived. Generations were born in that strange dimension. Children who had never seen Earth, who grew up in a place where the laws of nature were suggestions rather than rules. But not everyone wanted the changes, Daewon admitted, his expression pained. Some crew members refused the augmentations. They wanted to remain purely human. We respected that choice, but in that dimension, without modifications, the human lifespan was different. Some of those who refused aged normally and died. Others found that time barely touched them. We still don't fully understand why. The display showed a community growing aboard the transformed ship. Schools for children, workshops where engineers experimented with architect technology, training grounds where warriors practiced with weapons that could cut through dimensions. It was a civilization unto itself, isolated from the rest of humanity, evolving in strange directions. Counselor Vrath, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. 3,000 years? You're asking us to believe your crew survived for 3,000 years in an alien dimension and remained loyal to a home they'd never return to? Not all of us did remain loyal, a new voice said. Commander Unji, second generation, stepped forward. My generation never saw Earth. We only knew stories, legends from our parents and grandparents. Some of us questioned why we should return, why we should care about a galaxy we'd never known. There were debates, arguments, even fights about our purpose. What changed your minds? Ambassador Suhyun asked. Sunwoo answered. The architects showed us what happens when the devourers consume a dimension. They opened a window to a reality that had been completely devoured. There was nothing there. Not empty space, not void. Just absolute nothing. Every star gone. Every world erased. Every living thing unmade. And they showed us calculations. Our home dimension was next. If we didn't act, everything and everyone we had ever known, even just as stories, would cease to exist. The holographic display shifted to show the devourers for the first time. The council chamber filled with gasps and cries of horror. The devourers weren't creatures in any normal sense. They were tears in reality itself, spreading like cracks across glass. Where they touched, matter simply stopped existing. Light died. Sound failed. Even darkness was consumed, leaving behind something worse than nothing. The architects fought these things for eons, Hana explained. They developed weapons that could slow the devourers, even temporarily stop them. But they could never permanently defeat them. The devourers always came back, always found new ways through defenses. In the end, the architects realized they couldn't win. They could only delay. So they gave up? Someone in the council asked. No, Day One said firmly. They made a choice. They would use their remaining resources to save one dimension, ours. They had monitored our reality for millions of years, watched life evolve, civilizations rise and fall. They saw potential here, saw species that might succeed where they had failed, so they chose to sacrifice themselves to give us a chance. Dr. Mire's voice wavered with emotion. We watched them die. The last of the architects transferred their consciousness into our ship's computer systems. They gave us every weapon, every defense, every piece of knowledge they possessed. Then they flew their final vessels directly into the largest devourer concentration and detonated themselves. The explosion bought us time to escape, to find the gateway home. The display showed the last moments of the architect's civilization, ships of impossible beauty flying into absolute darkness, then bursting with light bright enough to blind. The devourers recoiled, wounded but not destroyed. And in that moment, the eternal horizon fled. We spent 50 years finding our way back, Day One said. 50 years navigating a dimension we still barely understood, looking for the original gateway. Time was different there. What felt like 50 years might have been 500 in our home dimension. We didn't know until we emerged and checked the date. Sunwoo stepped forward with a data crystal. This contains everything. The complete architect database, their technologies, their weapons, their tactics against the devourers. We're sharing it freely with all species, because you'll need every advantage when they arrive. Vrath stood, his scales rustling with agitation. This is convenient. You return with fantastic stories and impossible technology, claiming to be saviors. How do we know you're not the threat? How do we know you didn't destroy the architects and steal their technology? How do we know you're even human anymore? The chamber erupted in argument. Some species agreed with Vrath. Others defended the Eternal Horizon's crew. Violence nearly broke out between delegates before security restored order. Day One remained calm through it all. When silence finally fell, he spoke. You want proof we're still human? Fine, scan us. Run every genetic test you have. You'll find human DNA at our core, modified and enhanced, but fundamentally human. You want proof about the architects? Study the data crystal. Compare it with the energy readings you've been detecting at the galaxy's edge. You'll find they match. The shipyards never stopped working. Across 200 worlds, factories operated day and night, retrofitting vessels with architect technology. Chief Engineer Hana had split herself across a dozen locations simultaneously. Her consciousness uploaded to communication systems, guiding engineers who struggled to understand technologies that seemed like magic. General Kyungmi commanded the unified defense fleet from a modified battle station. She looked exhausted, having slept maybe 10 hours in the past week, but her eyes remained sharp. Around her, species that had been enemies months ago worked side by side. The devourer threat had achieved what millennia of diplomacy could not. True unity. Breach detected, a sensor officer called out. Sector 47. It's big. Really big. Kyungmi pulled up the tactical display. The breach was 3 times larger than the previous ones, and through it reality itself seemed to tear apart. The devourers were coming. All ships battle stations, Kyungmi ordered. This is not a drill. Engage defensive formation Alpha. Activate the new weapons. The fleet moved into position. Thousands of ships representing every major species in the galaxy formed a wall between the breach and inhabited space. Their hulls gleamed with newly installed architect technology. Weapons that could fire concentrated reality, shields that existed in multiple dimensions, engines that could fold space for quick repositioning. But even with all these upgrades, Kyungmi knew they were outmatched. The architects had fought the Devourers for millions of years and lost. What chance did they have? The Eternal Horizon appeared beside the battle station, having traveled from across the galaxy in minutes using its advanced drive system. Captain Daewon's voice filled the command channel. General, we're detecting 17 more breaches forming. They're coordinating the attack. This isn't exploration anymore. This is invasion. Can we stop them? Kyungmi asked. We can try, Daewon replied. And if we're very lucky, very brave, and very willing to sacrifice, we might succeed. The first Devourer emerged from the breach. It was impossible to describe properly. It looked like a tear in space, but also like a living thing. It moved with purpose, reaching out with appendages that weren't quite tentacles, weren't quite claws. Where it touched, space itself unraveled. A nearby asteroid simply ceased to exist, not destroyed or broken apart, but erased from reality as if it had never been. All ships, open fire, Kyungmi commanded. The fleet unleashed everything they had. Conventional weapons, upgraded energy beams, reality-warping projectiles. The assault was devastating enough to crack planets. It hit the Devourer like rain hitting an ocean. The entity paused, seeming to notice the fleet for the first time. Then it moved, faster than anything that size should move. 3 ships vanished before they could react, consumed utterly. Their crews didn't even have time to scream. The Eternal Horizon surged forward, its weapons firing in patterns that seemed random but somehow worked. Reality bent around the Devourer, constraining it, holding it in place. For a moment, the entity seemed trapped. Now, Daewon shouted, "Hit it with everything!" The fleet concentrated fire on the trapped Devourer. The upgraded weapons based on architect technology actually hurt it. The entity writhed, sections of it dissolving. For the first time since the battle began, hope sparked in Kyungmi's chest. Then 17 more Devourers emerged from newly formed breaches. Hope died. "We can't fight them all," someone whispered on the command channel. Commander Yunji's voice cut through the despair. "We don't need to fight them all. We need to buy time. Every second we hold them here is a second for civilians to evacuate, for the other defense fleets to prepare. We're not trying to win this battle. We're trying to survive long enough to win the war." The fleet split into groups, each engaging a different Devourer. The battle became chaos. Ships darting through impossible geometries, firing weapons that bent reality, dying by the dozens. But they fought. Every species, every soldier, every captain and crew member fought with desperate courage. Ambassador Suhyun watched the battle from Earth, feeling helpless. Millions of others watched with her, seeing their loved ones die in a war against enemies they barely understood. She wanted to be there, wanted to help somehow. But her role now was different. "Ambassador," Scientist Minho said, appearing at her side. He looked haggard, having worked for days without sleep. "We've been analyzing the pattern of the breaches. They're not random. The Devourers are forming a cage, surrounding the galaxy from multiple points. If they complete the formation, there will be no escape." "What can we do?" Suhyun asked. "Chief Engineer Hana has a plan," Minho said. "But you're not going to like it." Hana's voice came through the communication system, transmitted from somewhere in the battle zone. "We've studied how the architects fought the Devourers. They could never destroy them permanently, because the entities exist outside normal reality. But they could banish them, push them back into the spaces between dimensions. The problem is, it requires enormous energy, more energy than any weapon can generate." "How much energy?" Suhyun asked, though she already suspected the answer. "The equivalent of a ship's reactor going critical, specifically the Eternal Horizon's reactor. It's been upgraded with architect technology. If we detonate it at the center of the breach network, the explosion will create a dimensional shockwave. It will seal every breach simultaneously and push the Devourers back into the void between realities." Silence fell over the communication channel. Everyone understood what that meant. The Eternal Horizon would be destroyed. Its crew would die. The people who had survived 3,000 years in an alien dimension, who had sacrificed everything to bring salvation to their home galaxy, would sacrifice their lives as well. No, Soo-hyun said firmly. There has to be another way. There isn't, Daewon's voice replied, calm as always. We've run the calculations 1,000 times. This is the only way to stop them permanently. And it has to be us. The Eternal Horizons reactor is unique, enhanced with architect technology. No other ship has sufficient power. You can't, Soo-hyun protested, tears streaming down her face. You just came home. We just got you back. We came home for this, Dr. Murray said gently. This was always our purpose. The architects didn't save us and teach us and send us back just so we could live comfortable lives. They gave us the tools to save the galaxy. Using those tools was always going to require sacrifice. Young Officer Sunwoo's voice joined in, steady despite her youth. My grandparents made a choice 3,000 years ago to stay in that strange dimension and fight. My parents made a choice to continue that fight. Now it's my turn. We're not victims. We're volunteers. We choose this. The fleet fought on, holding the line while the Eternal Horizon maneuvered into position. Ships fell, hundreds of them, but for every vessel destroyed, the others fought harder. Species that had never worked together before coordinated perfectly. The threat of extinction had forged them into something new, something stronger. General Kyungmi's battle station took a direct hit from a devourer. Half her command staff died instantly. She dragged herself to the communication console, bleeding from a dozen wounds. Captain Daewon, you have a clear path. The fleet will hold the devourer's attention. Make it count. The Eternal Horizon accelerated, moving faster than anything else in the galaxy. It tore through space itself, leaving reality rippling in its wake. The ship headed directly for the center of the breach network, where the dimensional barriers were weakest. Daewon sat in his command chair one last time, surrounded by his crew. Those who had survived the original journey, the children and grandchildren born during those 3,000 years, the warriors and scientists and dreamers who had become legends. They were ready. All personnel, this is your captain, Daewon announced. It has been my honor to serve with you. Every one of you chose to be here, chose to fight, chose to sacrifice. History will remember what we did today. And more importantly, the billions of lives we save will get to have a future because of us. That's enough. That's more than enough. Chief Engineer Hana initiated the reactor overload sequence. Energy levels climbed exponentially. The ship began to glow brighter and brighter until it became a second sun against the darkness. The Devourers sensed the danger. They abandoned their attacks on the fleet and converged on the Eternal Horizon. But it was too late. The ship had already reached critical position. Daewon looked at his crew one final time. Hana with her cybernetic enhancements, Dr. Mirai, ancient and wise, Commander Eunji and Officer Sunwoo, representing the new generations, and hundreds of others all wearing expressions of peace despite their fear. For Earth, Daewon said quietly. For humanity. For the galaxy. For the ones who believed in us, Hana added. For those who will remember, Dr. Mirai whispered. The reactor reached critical mass. The Eternal Horizon became pure energy. An explosion that transcended normal physics. The blast wave expanded in every direction simultaneously, not moving through space but rewriting it. Where it touched the breaches, they sealed. Where it encountered the devourers, they were pushed back, screaming in voices that existed beyond sound, forced back into the spaces between realities. The dimensional barriers reformed, stronger than before. The cage the devourers had been building shattered. In a single moment of sacrifice,